Hey guys, I thought I would do a quick update on 2020 and 2021 here. Uh, we're in early March of 2021, and it's been interesting to watch The Watchmen. Uh, so, all through 2020, J.D. Farag, Barry Scarborough, and the usual elements were saying that based upon the vaccines coming and the pandemic and all the half truths and lies that the government said, and the fact that we see worldwide efforts being made towards the pandemic, as if worldwide efforts have never been made towards anything before. But they proclaimed 2020 was really the beginning of the end. Finally, it was the beginning of the end. Finally, after all these years. Despite the fact that in 2017, most of them were saying 2017 is the beginning of the end, and none of them mentioned a pandemic. Nobody ever said a word about pandemics. When they would quote Matthew 24, Luke 21, Mark 13, which they rarely quote, they would kind of just go right past the pestilences part, and they might throw in there, Zika virus, that stuff, AIDS, whatever. They never once said, now guys, don't get too excited because the end can't really be that close because we don't have a worldwide pandemic. And they never said that the mark of the beast was vaccination technology. No one ever even remotely thought of that. Yet now, in 2020, they began to say the Bible teaches that. The Bible teaches that vaccinations are the mark of the beast. So if the Bible teaches that, why weren't they telling us about it 5 years ago? Why weren't they telling us about it 100 years ago? 100 years ago they could have said something like, clearly here in the scriptures, there is some sort of medical element that will be placed under the person's skin to ostensibly protect them from disease. But the beast will use that as his mark. So he'll trick people into thinking they're getting medical help when they're really being subjugated to his reign. They could have said that 100 years ago without even knowing what vaccines were. No one ever said that. So I think 2020 has shown us a bunch of things. And they really should be lessons that these people learn, and I doubt they will. Although it's interesting to watch lately what's happening, because we are seeing a few things shift. We're finally hearing, after all these years, golly gee, we might be wrong about the fig tree generation. Typical. Time is passing. We're really close to the time where no one's going to be able to say we have more time. They're going to run out of time. So usually this is what happens. They start getting really nervous. They start saying maybe, and you'll notice even Chad, who drummed the drum for years that we are absolutely in the last days, and we know that because of the fig tree generation. And now he's like, well, if we've been interpreting those verses correctly, then the fig tree blah blah blah. Wait a minute, Chad. Wait a minute. 5 years ago, you were saying we are the fig tree generation, and this is how we know it, and here's the Bible to back it up. And now all of a sudden, well, if we're right about it, why were you so sure before and now you're not? If you're really a Bible believer, if these are things that are in the Bible, and those of us who don't see them are just blind, right? And in love with the world, these should never have been questioned, and they shouldn't be questioned now. You should be 100% behind the same things you said 5 years ago, but they aren't, because it proves again what these people are all about is attention. They want your attention, and some of them want your money, but most of them just want attention. And they can't get attention unless they say, this is the end, emphatically. We know it's the end, emphatically. And the problem is, time catches up with them. They suddenly are exposed, So then it's all, well, we could be wrong though. Okay. Then you can't say we know something. We can't say we are something when you could be wrong. You should be saying, I believe it's the end. It looks like it's a real strong possibility it's the end. This is only my opinion. I could be wrong. But they don't do that. They can't do that. No one listens to people who say that. So they're just being exposed here over time. Here's what I want them to hear, and here's what I wish those who followed them would hear. You guys need to start learning some lessons. And 2020 and this pandemic thing and whatever, whether it's true or false, whether it's half true, half false, whether vaccinations are evil and going to kill us all, it doesn't matter. Whether the virus came from China and was created by the Chinese to get rid of Trump, it doesn't even matter. It happened. We all lived through it. We are all living through it now. And we are all suffering in one way or the other. It's just a fact. Oh wait, one more fact. We are all still on this planet. So all of you watchmen can arrogantly talk about the future, because that's what it's an arrogant tone of, I know the future, and anyone who questions me is a scoffer. That's not scoffing. This video I'm doing now is not scoffing. It's questioning. It's being a Berean like you tell us to be. We're not supposed to just accept what you say without question. We're supposed to test it. But it's really funny that as soon as anybody like me tests any of these opinions and theories, we're scoffers and sinners. Go away, sinner. Get off my channel, sinner. Why? What are you afraid of? Are you afraid of something? Yeah, I know you are. You're afraid that you'll be exposed. So, sorry for the long introduction, but here's the lessons, okay? Number one, nobody can predict the timing of the rapture based on the news of the day. Let me show you an interesting thing that I have in my little library here, okay? I'm going to show you this little pamphlet I scanned in, and I apologize if it's kind of hard to read, and I apologize for the speed of my computer, but here's a pamphlet called The Beginning of the End. This was written and published in 1919, over 100 years ago. So let's look at a couple of interesting passages from this speculation pamphlet. Now, I want you to notice how similar this sounds to what people say today, 100 years later, okay? We are told in the Word that the day of Christ shall not come except to come a falling away first, apostasy. That apostasy is well on its way and warns us that the beginning of the end has set in. Hey, Jeff Grider, you made a website that you started in 2009 called Now the End Begins. This guy said 100 years ago that the end had already begun. Was he correct? How do you know you're correct? And if you don't know, then stop saying you know. Start being honest. They can't be honest. They wouldn't have an audience if they were honest. Which really should tell you something. What kind of ministry is built on dishonesty? The very words they use are dishonest. Tim Henderson, 2 years ago, the rapture is very, very, very soon. The rapture is any second. 2.5 years ago, was he right? No, of course not. Has he repented and said, okay, I'm going to stop saying that because I obviously don't know because I was so wrong so many times? No. I'm not going to call them liars, but that's dishonest. You know that you don't know for sure, yet you're acting like you do. Anyway, I made that point. So here they've got their own view of things 100 years ago. There was the higher criticism movement. That's where it began. We all know it began then. Well, does anyone talk about the higher criticism movement today when they're talking about this apostasy that's clearly underway? No. No one even mentions that. I've never heard that word. You know why? Because just like 100 years ago, by the way, I could have found a pamphlet if they had printing presses in the year 1200 that said the same stuff. Now again, this is not scoffing, this is truth. I'm not saying where's the promise of his coming, for all things have always been since the beginning of the... I'm just pointing out the truth. This is a real pamphlet that was really made 100 years ago. What I'm saying is, how do any of you speculators know, and how can any of you claim in the authority of God himself that you're right about what the times are? It spread to Britain, America, Australia, okay, blah, blah, blah. Look, he's pointing to Darwinism. In his day, that was the biggest thing that had just come around, you know. So, you know, whatever that was in the Christian faith, he's blaming the success of Darwinism on that. Let's continue. World War I had just ended. He didn't even know about World War II. And here he is talking about something we can't even comprehend. Apparently there was a lie going around that death in battle saves your soul. If you go to battle and you die for your country under God's, I guess, authority, then you're going to go to heaven whether you believe in Jesus or not. That was being taught. And of course that was his proof that in 1919 the apostasy had begun. Is anyone out there going to tell me the apostasy began back then? Go ahead. So you're going to say it began? Okay, it's fine. It began 100 years ago. It's continuing today. Okay, fine. Then tell me this answer. How much longer do we have to go? And how do you know how much longer we have to go? How much worse will it get? By the way, are Christians teaching this battle thing now? Or has that gone away? It's gone away. So hasn't some of that apostasy actually gotten better? How many of you speculators are going to tell me that, like Barry Scarborough does? You know, Barry Scarborough keeps telling everybody the 1990s were the last real decade of real American, real church, blah, blah, blah. Oddly, it's when he was a younger man. So clearly, whenever we're younger, life seems better when we get older, looking back on it, doesn't it? You know, the wisest man in the Bible, Solomon, outside of Jesus, said, that's stupid. Don't look back on the days, he says, of your youth and say those days were better than now. What happened to those days? Don't do that. It's foolish. But Barry thinks the 90s were still wonderful. Okay. One of the terrible signs of the coming apostasy is the attempt to get rid of the Bible. My goodness. People were trying to get rid of the Bible? They were trying to make a shorter, easier to understand one. Huh. Has anyone said a word about this ever in our day? Mutilated hymn books. So, again, here's the mantra all the time. Evil doctrines. Anything that doesn't agree with what I believe is an evil doctrine, and therefore we're in the apostate time. Anybody, by the way, anybody who wants this pamphlet, just let me know. I'll email it to you. Here's spiritualism. This one is always being bandied about. Anytime that somebody interprets a piece of scripture differently than someone else, they're accused of this. I'm not interpreting, they'll say. I'm just reading it for what it plainly says. Okay. Isn't that funny? Because every single word you hear or read is being interpreted by you, period. You're interpreting what I'm saying right now. Look at this one. A favorite target of Christian evangelicalism is Roman Catholicism. It's on the increase in English-speaking lands. There are more monasteries and nunneries in England today than when King Henry the blah, 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 blah. Here's how you know that this is truly from 1919. 2-day. Oh, goodness. Are we seeing an increase of nunneries and monasteries in Europe right now? No. I would say that, if anything, it's gone down. Was this man right? No. He was 100% incorrect. And I'm going to ask you, why should we believe the people today when they say the same thing these people said? It's not mocking. It's questioning. There is nothing wrong with questioning. Don't let those people intimidate you. By the way, if they don't listen, it's kind of like, oh well, Barry Scarborough will wake up tomorrow morning with his feet on planet Earth. Brother Chooch will wake up May 15th, 2021, his feet on planet Earth, God willing, he's still alive. He will have to admit that his theories and all of his pontificating was 100% incorrect and a waste of time. Sorry, that's what's going to happen. Archbishop Ireland says in 10 years America will be theirs, the Roman Catholic. So I'm going to go down further past this into basically the news of the day. So let's skip the religion thing. Wars and rumors of wars. Oh my gosh, you mean we've always had wars and rumors of wars? Are you kidding me? We haven't? We have? What? The Great War came like a bolt from the blue, so unexpected was it. So that's World War One. Notice he doesn't say World War One came, because there was no World War II yet. So anybody who questions whether this is authentic or not, that's proof right there. Here's all the millions of people that died. Do we have anything even remotely resembling this today? And this World War II made this look like, like nothing. And since the Great War has ended, is there a reign of universal peace? No. Blah, 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 blah. Unrest and trouble are present. Okay. Famines and pestilence. This one's funny. The Spanish influenza has gone on its way unchecked and in 3 years' time has claimed more victims throughout the world. Are you going to tell me that today's quote-unquote pandemic that's worldwide is unprecedented? Here's right from a person who was living in it, who's saying, it's claimed more lives worldwide than the wars. Oh my goodness, it's the beginning of the end. We know it. We know it. Anybody still have an argument with this? I dare any of you to argue with me on this. Tell me where my logic is off. And I don't want to hear you say, well, they were wrong, obviously, but this time we're right. Trust me. Why? Why should I trust you? And what good is it doing? Have you guys been right since 2012? I'll just pick a date 10 years ago. Have you been right since then? No. And you never predicted anything that's happened in the last year. It all came upon us quite suddenly. Here we go with the false notion that there's going to be a revived Roman Empire. This one's really good. Do you guys realize that in 1919 they were already talking about this fig tree thing before Israel even actually became a state? Hey, all the trees are shooting forth, they say. The Lord prophesied, behold the fig tree, which is typical of Judah, and all the trees, typical of the Gentiles. Nonsense. When they now shoot forth, da 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 da. So it's the kingdom of God is nigh at hand, because when you see the blah blah blah. Again, makes the same mistake these people are making today, which is trying to say that Jesus meant trees blooming are a sign of the end. That's not what he said. He just said they're a sign of summer, and just like there are signs of summer, there are also signs of the kingdom. That's what he said. But of course he was wrong. He's talking about countries that don't even exist anymore. Yugoslavia and Czechoslovakia, that's now the Czech Republic. I mean, none of this was even... Georgia went away, became part of the USSR and Russia, and then came back as Georgia again. We can't look at the news and make a determination about where we are. This guy had no idea that Yugoslavia and Czechoslovakia would be basically gone and merged into one country. He had no idea that the country of Georgia would be sucked into the USSR for 50 years, 60 years, and then spit back out again as Georgia. He didn't know that. And you don't know that. You don't know where we're going to be in 10 years. You don't know if the United States is even going to be around in 10 years. Here's the fig tree. How is the fig tree shooting forth, guys, in 1919? Can you explain that to me? See, all these liars, they get on here and they say, prior to 1948, nobody even understood any of this. Nobody even thought any of this. Nobody knew any of this. We now know. We know all these things because we are the generation. No. This fig tree thing is nothing new. I was actually wrong about that. I thought Hal Lindsey came up with that. I was wrong. It's been around for a long time. No event in the Great War was quite so thrilling as the capture of Jerusalem by the British. Really thrilling? I'm sure people died that day. Was that thrilling to you, sir? Yeah, of course. It's always thrilling within somebody else's issues. Zionists are raising in the United States a fund of $10 million to buy land. See? This was all going on 100 years ago. Palestine. Okay, so this one, the revival of... So the temple to be rebuilt. Scarborough, the lying scumbag, gets on here all the time and says the four mega signs, one of which is the temple is sitting on G, waiting on O. It's never been like that in the entire history of mankind. This is the first time it's ever been ready. Right here. We're ready to go. It's some years ago, the Standard had an article. Some years ago in 1919. So maybe it was 1912 that the Standard wrote that article. Hello. The Co-Mason, founded in 1909 to prove the vital connection of Freemasonry, modern Jewish. Okay, I've made my point. Clearly, you guys. No one can predict the timing of the rapture based on the news of the day, because you don't know what's coming next. You don't even know what came before us. Second of all, bad things might happen to Christians you aren't going to escape. I'm sorry to have to tell you this, because I know that all of you watch Scarborough and J.D. Farag and Jan Markell and whoever else because you don't want to face the reality that bad things happen. And bad things are happening now. And, it's just interesting to watch, Farag got up the other day and said, I'm going to do a video on this. He said, I'm kind of ashamed that I've complained about being persecuted in America because we have it really good. People in China and the Middle East have been persecuted for generations for being a Christian. I'm like, no duh, I've been saying that for years. And I'm a mocker, right? And it's like, yeah, Americans might get persecuted. American Christians might actually have to suffer for their faith. Which, by the way, we're supposed to be joyful in that. We're not supposed to sit in our houses, in our offices, in our $450,000 houses, in our offices with our high-speed internet connections and say, hang on everyone, the rapture will get us out of here. Have you not seen in 2020 that bad things may just happen? By the way, we haven't even come close to anything really bad happening yet. Not really. A lot of Christians still have jobs. I still have my business. Things are still great. Number 3, this is one of the things that grinds my gears about this speculation community. Bad things happening are not exciting. Let me say that again. War in the Middle East is not exciting. Giant earthquakes in other lands far away from your back door are not exciting. I realize your teaching tells you to believe that because the worse things get, the closer we are. What God do you believe in? Do you really believe the God of the Bible would create a system that says to Christians, when you see things bad in the world going on and getting worse, get excited because that means you're getting out of here? Does that sound like something a God of the universe would say? Not the God I read about in the Bible. And it's really interesting that people get sober when the thing that's bad is actually happening to them. Back in March of 2020, when J.D. Farag first heard about I think it was about a year ago today, March 2nd, 2020. He jumped up and down gleefully behind his pulpit because the coronavirus was hitting the United States and was looking like it was going to be a bad thing. I'm not kidding you. Go look the video up. He said, I suppose some of us could be criticized for getting excited when we see things like this happening. So he knows that that's a critical thing. Unbelievable. So no, we're going to find out more and more if things keep getting worse, like these people predict. Yeah, it ain't that exciting, especially when it happens to you. And finally, listen to me, you speculator, watchmen, liars. You are to blame when your predictions fail. You, Jerry Toney, Barry Scarborough, J.D. Farag. When your predictions fail, it's your fault. It isn't the fault of your followers. You don't get on YouTube and then yell at them. Well, you probably shouldn't have listened to me in the first place. Maybe you shouldn't have. Maybe you should have been a Berean instead of listening to me so much. No. So, that's it. Wanted to point that out. I know I spent a lot of time on number 1, but you guys, there's stuff. I have reams of information sitting around my office about previous predictions, where the people that made them absolutely said, we are absolutely there. There's no question. Anyone who doesn't see that we're at the end is lying to themselves, is a nominal Christian, is got their head in the sand. Any number of negative things. Get ready for bad things. We don't know what's next. They're not exciting. They're not exciting when they happen to anybody, okay, guys? War in the Middle East, where a bunch of people you've never met are hurting, thrown out of their homes, children are dying. That's not exciting. That's sick to say that it's exciting. And finally, I'm talking to you, speculators. You don't like you don't like it when you have to deal with the downside of your little fame. I'm sorry to say this. If you're going to build a 60,000 person audience around lies, when the lies are found out, you're going to have to suffer for it. I'm sorry. That's just the way it goes.